Welcome to 33 Voices, everyone. You have chosen a really exciting day to join us on the show because we're here with Ellen Bennett, the founder of Hedley and Bennett and the author of her new book, Dream First, Details Later: How to Quit Overthinking and Make It Happen. The book chronicles Ellen's incredible journey building Hedley and Bennett into an apron company that is truly beloved by the world's best chefs. Most importantly, it captures her contagious zest for life, which I truly believe makes the world brighter every day. Ellen, your enthusiasm totally fills me up, and I'm so excited to be with you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Whether it's your treehouse office, the rainbow of colors that illuminate your life, or best of all, your 200-pound pig, Oliver, you genuinely aspire to make everything fun and beautiful. What is your philosophy around celebrating and savoring life?
I just really love seeing something in my head and then having it come to life. And when I was little, I wanted a pet pig. And I grew up going to Mexico a lot, and every house was a fun color. And so as I grew up and the world started to become much more black and white, I just didn't really feel like that was life. So I said, well, I'm going to do it the way that I see life, which is colorful. So I have incorporated a whole lot of color into almost everything that I do and everything that I'm around in the house that we have, to the wall at our factory. Like, I just love how it makes me feel and also how it makes other people feel. It like wakes you up and reminds you that things can be zesty. And that's how I do it. That's just every day I'm finding ways to add the zest.
I think having fun is so important and sometimes is underrated. And dreaming is such an avenue to do so. But sometimes it feels like it's become almost a lost art. Why do you think it's so important to dream big, like you say in the book? I loved when you wrote, fling yourself out into the ocean of life. Yes, please.
Well, we all have ideas. Everybody's got ideas, but ideas are just like a dime a dozen and they're everywhere to be found. But action and execution against those ideas is less prevalent. And so when I am excited about something, I really try to err on the side of action. And there's nothing like too complicated about it. It's literally me being like, okay, I want to do that. All right, what do I need to do that? Like, what's the first step I need to do to get into that action? And then I don't really worry about the rest of it. Whereas my husband is very much like, okay, we're going to build something in the backyard. We need to get every tool from Home Depot and we're going to do a plan and draw it up. And I'm like already halfway in the backyard, like digging holes, and he's still like mapping things out. And so there's a balance, right? The book's called Dream First, Details Later, not Details Never. But I err on just getting started, because I find you learn so much from the actual walking of the road or doing the thing. And then you learn more, and then you can adjust and adapt to it.
Momentum inspires you so much too. And I think it begets momentum as you start to get going. I want to start out today in the kitchen because that's where the seed of your journey was planted. You write about striving to be number one every day at Providence, as well as at the other restaurants that you worked. What did your time, Ellen, as a line cook teach you? And how did it shape your own pursuit of excellence? Because it seems so intense.
Yeah, no, definitely an intense environment, but it's intense for a good reason. You're aiming for perfection and speed at the same time when you're cooking in a restaurant like that. And there's a real beauty and an art to it. And man, I wish every person graduating college worked at a restaurant, either front of house or back of house at some point in their life, because you learn so much about how to just manage people and feelings and, you know, like an overwhelming feeling of like everything is falling apart and yet you somehow have to keep going. There's no like there's no pull out button. Like you can't just eject yourself from the kitchen when you have 100 tickets and you're, as we like to call it, in the weeds. If you're in the weeds, you don't have enough time and you have to get all these dishes out and all these, and the waiter's like, where's my dish? And it's very like Ratatouille vibes. Everything's like speed and moving and all this stuff. But it's beautiful because it taught me how to be agile and how to adapt. And if I was ever in the middle of service, which is what it's called to be cooking during, the time like 6 to 10 p.m., and you ran out of anything, you couldn't just be like, oh, well, better go have a meeting about how we ran out of supplies. Like you get your ass into gear and you go to the reach in these giant refrigerators and you find your shit. And in between whatever it is that you're doing on your station, you got to like prep the thing that you need more of, whether it's cut chives or you need to slice more fish. You got to figure it out. And that just forces nimbility, which I think is humongously important in life, but especially as an entrepreneur. You need to be willing to shift and adapt and be okay when your plan gets lit on fire and you thought you had enough fish for the night and it turns out you don't. And your chef's like, why the hell did you run out of fish? And you're like, I'm going to fix it right now. And you go and fix it. Like that's what being in a professional kitchen to me gives you.
I think what's amazing too is that it really stayed with you. There are some stories in the book where you talk about being back in those kitchens, and it was amazing to see how you still had that rhythm so innately in you, even just when you were moving through the kitchen and knew how to navigate so swiftly. The early years when you were working 3 jobs and starting Hedley and Bennett were so taxing. What conversations were you having with yourself when you woke up in the morning and you went to sleep at night? Like, how were you taking care of your mental health so you could have the stamina to be doing all of that?
It was definitely not that structured. It was like, just keep going. I think, to each his own on how they sort of navigate the challenges of life. But to me, I don't feel like you need to put yourself in a closet and turn the lights off and not talk to anybody to protect your health, protect yourself. I actually think that when I am out in the world and I'm getting things done, I feel more endorphins and enthusiasm than when I'm sitting at home trying to protect myself from something that might hurt me or might harm me or might be overwhelming or might cause anxiety. Like I lean into, I want to do something. You just got to do it. And then I start doing it. And yes, sometimes it's overwhelming and stressful and all of the above. But I've also realized that like, that's actually part of the path. You don't talk to an entrepreneur and they're like, oh yeah, I grew this company in a stress-free way. And so if you are putting the pressure on yourself that you should be growing something stress-free, you're completely setting yourself up for failure because it's impossible. And so if you can like be willing to feel the feels and not kind of evade them and just lean into them when they do happen, that's to me the best way that I get through it. If I get mad, I get mad. And then I push myself through the madness. And then I'm like, all right, are you done being mad now? Okay, cool. On to the next thing. And instead of like pushing down the madness and pretending like I don't feel mad. Does that make sense? I just like lean into the feelings I'm feeling and then I move on.
The awareness is so important, as is the action that you were referring to in terms of just asking yourself in this moment, like, what do I need right now to feel good or feel energized? And maybe it's putting a plan into motion, or maybe it's taking a second or a day to feel whatever that madness is. Because I think otherwise, like you were saying, you're sort of setting yourself up for failure by thinking that nothing is going to go wrong. And
Yeah.
we all
Yeah.
know that that is definitely not the case. One of my favorite parts of the book when you were talking about the early years and other parts of your journey too, is the deep and sincere gratitude that you have for everyone who took a chance on you. You talk about letting the gratitude beam out of you. What did those mentors and teachers teach you about the life-changing impact of taking a chance on someone? What did that mean to you then and now?
I have time and again in life met people that have taken chances on me, and I've met people that haven't taken chances on me. And I just kind of remind myself that there are billions of people in the world. And if someone says no to you today, that doesn't mean that there aren't like another 100,000 people out there that will say yes to you tomorrow. And so I just have found a way to take it a little less personally. And I still take it personally sometimes. And then I'm like, all right, nope, 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 nope. Come on, keep going. Like there's just this like constant push to just keep walking forward and adapting and adjusting along the way. But with the ones that have said yes to me, they give me like a gigantic ray of hope for a while, right? Because they're like, oh my God, they believe in what I'm doing. That means I believe in what I'm doing. Okay, let's do this. And I had, my first chef, as I've told the story a million times, but my very first chef that I worked for, he was the one that said that he was going to buy aprons, and I convinced him to give me the order of aprons instead of giving it to this other person he had hired to do it. And that's how Headley Minute began. And he took a very full-blown shot on me and let me say yes to something that I didn't even know how I was going to execute on. And so when people are like, come on, let me try, I feel inclined to let people try as employees, as staff, as friends, because, well, people have done that to me. That doesn't mean it always lands, by the way. I've definitely failed plenty of times, and I've had other people that said they could do something and then they didn't, but it's okay. You just have to like allow it to fail sometimes, and just by giving them a shot.
I love that notion of it being a ray of hope and shared belief, because I think that's so powerful. One of my favorite stories about a mentor is a story about Chef Jonathan Beno and what became the traveling apron. Can you tell us that story? I told my family at dinner.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Yeah, so I had met this unbelievable chef. His name's Jonathan Beno, and he was like the head chef at the French Laundry and at Per Se in New York, and kind of like one of the grandfathers of cooking for all these younger chefs. Like David Chang came up under him, and a bunch of really epic chefs. And I met him, we became friends, and I went to New York to see him. And this was when I was still selling aprons out of a bag. And Jonathan Beno, walked me through his kitchen, and there were a million things happening. And it was just like full blown action. And he and I was there to say hi. And I also wanted to bring him an apron and whatnot. And usually, I go to a restaurant and I'm like, here, I brought you something, like this is a gift. But in this moment, he had this thing that he had gotten. It was a beautiful leather blue apron, and a Hermes apron from Thomas Keller. And there was only one other one in the world. They'd made one for him and made a duplicate. And he gave it to Thomas, or Thomas gave it to him. And Jonathan gave it to me and said, you hold on to this for now. It's going to serve you more than it's going to serve me. And like one day when I opened my own restaurant, because he was a chef at another restaurant, he's like, one day when I open my restaurant, you bring it back to me, and I'll keep carrying it forward. But for now, you carry this. It's gonna be the right thing for you. And so I like took it back to LA, wrapped in a plastic wrap, just couldn't believe my eyes because it was so beautiful. And like, what a moment for this man to be passing this thing down to me from his biggest mentor and saying, you can do it. And he was saying you can do it to me, but he was also kind of saying you can do it to himself, because he knew that by giving it to me, he needed to get it back at some point, which meant he had to fulfill his own dream of getting a restaurant. And it was very beautiful. And I remember just walking out like crying because I didn't cry in the restaurant, but I held it together till I got out of the restaurant. And I was just so kind of touched that somebody would trust me with something like that. And he saw the fire in my eyes and I saw the fire in his. And I was like, okay, all right, I'm going to hold on to this thing and I better not lose it. And it's going to be with me for a long time. And I kid you not, I had that apron for almost 5 years. And then he reached out to me and he was like, hey, it's time. I'm opening my restaurant next year. So I'm going to need that apron back. Do you still have it? And I was like, of course I do. And so then we shipped it back to him. So it was really like, and at that point I had a factory with it was a big building and all my staff in there, and he had his own restaurant. So it was beautiful.
That story, just listening to it right now, gives me goosebumps. I'm so grateful that you shared it here and in the book. And when you talk about that connection that the two of you had, you didn't even know each other that well at the time. And you were able to forge such a deep relationship that you will remember forever. You really view everyone as a co-pilot on your journey and believe that the adventure is always better together. It feels like, Ellen, that you have a memorable connection with everyone that you write about in the book, even people you meet one time. What does true connection mean and feel like to you? Like, how do you go a level deeper and make it lasting?
I think it has to do with just being excited to learn from people. And like talk about a lot in the book, it's like not making anyone ever feel like a transaction, because they're not. And I think sometimes we get caught up in this like wheel of success, and you want to know people that will help you know other people. And we just like, we smell the bullshit a mile away now, and nobody wants that. And so when I meet somebody that I really like, I'm like, oh, I like that person. We're going to be friends. And I kind of like announce it and pronounce it. And I do it because I genuinely feel that way. And if I don't feel that way, I don't do it. And so the people that I'm telling you this about are people that I felt that connection with. But there's people that I've met in life that it's just sort of like, okay, that's a guy, that's a girl, like whatever. All right, onto the next spot in life. And you just kind of keep trucking along. But when you find the good eggs, you have a feeling that is a good person. That is somebody who is great and awesome and should be kept in your life because they're wonderful people. And so I identify those people in my mind. And then I'm just like, yep, all right, I'm keeping that one around, because guess what? They're awesome. They're kind. They're intelligent. They're driven. They're humble. And I love the way they show up. So whoever they are, like that's the person. And it's such a wide range of people. It's like, I just had dinner with a friend of mine who's like 75, and he brought his wife who's turning 80. And I love seeing them. And then it's like, I'll have dinner with somebody who's 30. So it's just a full range of people. And we all know when we meet someone who's great. So just say something when you meet somebody that's great and be like, you're really freaking cool. Here, let me give you my info and you've got mine. And now we're friends in real life. And like, let's make this happen. And you proclaim it like you do everything else.
Proclaiming it is so important. And one of the lessons I actually learned in childhood from my grandfather was about that. I just didn't know, but he used to call everyone my friend. Anytime he met someone, he would call them my friend, even if it was the first time. And my little brother and I would do that too without knowing it. And I think when you follow that feeling and you view the world that way, it makes your life so much more beautiful and enriching every day. So I love that you shared that. I want to shift gears and talk about creativity, because your creativity is electric. You write about experiencing creative euphoria the first time you made spicy meaty picadillo. What does creative euphoria feel like to you?
It's that like spark within you, or like that fire that gets lit up, and it's an enthusiasm that is different than other things. And when you feel that enthusiasm or that excitement, just like I said, when you meet somebody who's a good egg, you're like, that's somebody I want to know. It's a similar, it's like a cousin feeling. Like it's a feeling that is similar, but not exactly the same. And I think it just like lit me up, and in a way that was different than when I took out the trash or watched TV or took a shower or whatever, just like basic stuff. And I really liked it, and I got excited. And then I also wanted to know more about it. And then I was curious, and I found myself wanting to be more curious. And that kind of like led me on this trail of cooking and what it means and how it works and what goes into it, and asking people questions. And so my advice to people out in the world is like, when they're like, well, how do I find the thing that, really lights me up? It's like, go do a bunch of stuff, start trying lots of different things, and find that feeling when you're doing stuff, try it. And then if you feel it, then do more of that thing.
Is the creative euphoria a feeling that you can catalyze for yourself, or does something else need to inspire it?
I think for me, it's not prescriptive or like, oh, here's where I'm going to get it. It just happens. And that's why there's a lot of windy roads in my book that I talk about. And I think that was me trying to find those things that really fulfilled me. And I moved to Mexico City when I was 18, and I had a million jobs while I was there. And each one of those jobs was peculiar and different. And it was everything from announcing the lottery on television in Mexico to, being an English tutor, to being a simultaneous translator for the Mexican Railroad Union. Like, who the hell does that? And I did all those things, I think, on a quest to find my way in the world and to explore. And some things were totally landing flat. And then other things were like, oh my God, I love this. Food and cooking happened to be one that no matter when, where, how, what, and with who I was doing it, I was pumped to be doing it. And I just wanted to do more of it. And I find that is essentially passion, right? That's essentially enthusiasm, vigor, excitement towards something, is just wanting more of it and not feeling like it's a chore or a task, but simply you don't want to stop doing it.
When you get into that state to it's creative and intentional and fulfilling and imaginative, serendipitous things start to happen. And it's just like this chain of good things that you're not really orchestrating. The universe is just presenting them to you. Tell us the magic of Vitamixing and one of your favorite stories. I love this.
Oh my God, there's so many Vitamixing moments. Which story? So I make sure I tell the right one.
First, will you tell us about what the magic of Vitamixing means? And then we'll go into a story.
Totally. So the Vitamixing, I guess I'd need to tell a little story to tell about Vitamixing. It's this concept that I kind of coined because there was one point in our journey where we had this tiny little office, and I needed all these kitchen supplies. Like, I needed a refrigerator, and I needed a blender, and I wanted a Vitamix, and I wanted to stock up our office kitchen like if it was a proper professional kitchen. And I decided that I wanted to do this. And then I went on my merry way trying to figure out how the hell I was going to do that. And I had been checking different things out and talking to different people and kind of like poking and prodding, I suppose you could say, at the universe, trying to find a way to get these things. And then a week or so later, and by the way, I had already decided this was going to happen. So it was very much like, okay, this is happening. Great. How do I make it happen? And I was finding that way. And then a couple of weeks later, somebody called me from a TV show, and they were like, hey, we love your aprons. We have no budget though. Would you be open to bartering or something so that we can get the aprons and we have other stuff? And I was like, I'm all about a good barter. So I was like, sure, tell me what you've got, or what are you thinking? Like, we love your show. We'd be happy to participate in this. And they're like, well, we've got some refrigerators, we've got a stand-up mixer, a Vitamix, we got a juicer and a dishwasher. And I was like, holy shit, is this really happening right now? And they said, yeah, we've got that. And I said, okay, cool. Well, how many aprons do you want? And they're like, oh, we'd want like 50 in return. And I was like, okay. And I said, great. And so they delivered the refrigerator and the blender and the Vitamix and all these things completely brand new to our office, like 3 or 4 days later. And next thing you knew, we had a Vitamix. And so I always pretend and joke and say that, I Vitamixed a Vitamix. So I essentially like willed it into existence because I decided that I wanted something, and then I took action against it. And I made that choice and that decision, and then it just came to life. And when you are creating something, you are kind of doing the same thing. You're deciding that you're going to do something and it doesn't exist. And then you have to find ways to make it come to life. And it takes action and it takes trial and error. And sometimes, just sometimes, you get lucky and things just Vitamix themselves into existence right in front of you. So that is the Vitamixing journey.
The Vitamixing journey is the best. And you did mention too that it doesn't always happen that way. And I want to talk about a couple of the challenges that were really formative for you. You always find a way to make things happen. So the first time that you came up short was a doozy. It packed many big lessons, two of which were owning your mistakes and realizing that life isn't what it looks like on the outside. So diving into the first one, tell us about how you felt personally when you missed the vault deadline, which was one of those really tough early setbacks, and why it's never more important to show up for someone than when you have let them down.
Yeah, for sure. I would say this was like one of the very, very, very first big orders. It was about 150 aprons for Brian Voltaggio. And he was doing some stuff for his restaurant and he had a deadline and we needed to hit it. And we had said we could hit it. And frankly, we were nobody knew who we were as a company. So the fact that we had secured this order was a big freaking deal. Like, it felt like the equivalent of a 10,000 unit order at the time. And I was like, yep, we're going to do this. And as I've now kind of shared, I like to make things happen no matter what no matter what, no matter how, and no matter what bump I hit. I'm like, oh no, we're going to land this. It's going to be fine. And I totally was just like, yep, our sewers, they're doing it. I would go check in on them and things seemed to be cruising along. And then the days started to get shorter and shorter to the point when we needed to get them to FedEx. And I would go in and they still had stacks of aprons not fully sewn. And there was just like stuff all over the place in their sewing area. They weren't our employees, they were like a contractor. And there are Cheetos out on top of sewing machines. And I was just like, wait, what's happening? Like, you guys made an agreement. You said you're going to deliver. Why is this not happening? And I was starting to get upset. And then I'd be like, guys, we only have so many days left. You have to deliver. We cannot fuck this up. And they just like could not get it there. And the day of the shipment arrived and I was like, FedEx is coming at this time. And if we don't give it to them, we're screwed. Like, we are not going to make this. They're like, yeah, don't worry, Elena, like, we'll get them for you. It's fine. It's fine. And they kept saying that they would, but I was looking around, they were very much not ready. And, brass tacks, when the time came, they arrived, FedEx rolled in, they're like, FedEx. And I looked at them and I looked at the boxes and I looked at how many they still had to do, and they were so far from ready. And I was like dying and I'm like yelling and trying to figure out how do we get them into the boxes. We're speaking in Spanish. Everything's just like mayhem, chaos, trying to get these damn aprons to be completed. And like each one of them, when you finish our aprons, like it's a it's a complicated process. There's like, it takes a million steps, and we're very particular about it. And it's the fabric and it's the construction. It's not just like, oh, here's a piece of fabric and strap on some straps. And so they were going through like the details of it, but not at the speed we needed to. And FedEx left. And I was just like I remember sitting on the floor with my head in my hands. I'm like, oh my God, like we missed it. And they get the last aprons completed a few hours later. And I'm just like, I can't even believe we didn't hit this target, because I thought we're going to hit it. We're going to make it. We're going to get there and it's going to happen. And sure as hell did not happen. So I put all the stuff in my car and I drove to the airport to LAX thinking I could get it on the plane. And I drove out to the chain link fence with one of our earliest team members, Marissa, in the car. And we were standing there at this chain link fence trying to convince the security guard to let us onto the tarmac so that we could get the fucking aprons onto the plane. I couldn't believe that we hadn't done it. I couldn't believe that we had failed. And we failed miserably. And the security guard just stared at us laughing. And he's like, what are you guys talking about? I'm not letting you on the tarmac. No, you can't drive your Mini onto the damn plane. Like, you turn this car around, you get out of here before I arrest you, basically. And we left so defeated. I mean, you'd think that, we had just like lost everything, because it felt like we had, and we didn't make it. And then the next day they didn't arrive on time. And so I had to call his assistant and explain what had happened. And I ended up, I think it was overkill, but I ended up comping their entire order, because I just couldn't believe that I had committed and that I hadn't delivered. It was almost like I was making sort of amends, if you will, to repair the damage that I had done on my own ability to execute on a deadline. And so I said, keep them. I can't believe we didn't hit the deadline. I'm so sorry. This will never happen again. Just know that like, we're here for you if you need anything. And they were very grateful. And they were also bummed out that we didn't hit the deadline. And that was like a big lesson, because we were a 2-3-man band at the time. So an order like that really was kind of so expensive and cost us so much money. We made no money and actually lost money on it. So that was pretty brutal.
I think it's so important that you went to so many lengths, though, to apologize and be honest and make it right. And it lends to a lesson that you shared in the book that is just so crucial. You write, even though the world can let you down with no thought for feelings, it will also reward you generously for doing the little things with integrity when no one's watching. Tell us about the value of doing the little things with integrity, because later on in your journey, when you were facing a huge scare of potentially losing your headquarters, like that's something else that came to fruition for you because you always did right.
Believe me, I've made a bajillion mistakes and failed so many times along the journey. And so by no means are we perfect, but when things did not go right, even if it wasn't exactly at that moment, like I do feel that you got to try and make it better at some point, and you got to kind of fix it, repair it in some way. And you got to do it for yourself, because you're the one living with it. You know that you didn't do it right. And so if you're just going to keep living with the fact that you didn't do it right, nobody else really knows that except for you. And so integrity is just like, is you, right? It's like what you carry with yourself and the decisions you make about what you should and shouldn't do. So when things went wrong, even if it wasn't directly me every time doing the mistake, I felt like as the business owner, I had to own up to whatever had happened. And I do believe it's just like a good trait to have. It's a good skill set to cultivate, because you just fix it, whether you're big or small. Like it's such a bummer when a big company doesn't take ownership of something that they messed up on. And I find it a big mistake when little companies don't take ownership, because you're not thinking about the long game. You're thinking about this one customer in front of you upset right now. You're not thinking about that one customer who could be a lifelong customer, and they're going to share it with their friends, and they're going to tell them that it's a good idea or a bad idea to work with you. And so I just want to have people say, I'm glad I worked with Hedley and Bennett on this thing. And we've totally messed stuff up enough times that not everybody has said that. But if you can kind of balance it out and own stuff when it goes wrong, you're much better off. You just really are, mentally, physically, emotionally, all of the above, because you know you did your part. And if I had maybe not covered the full cost of those aprons for Brian's team, I feel like it just would not have sat with me as well as it did, knowing that I did everything I could do to fix it, and then I could move on, and I was no longer stuck in that moment of like regret.
The personal part is so important too, because it really does stay with you. And I think anything that you could do to try to resolve that feeling, even just for yourself, like you were saying, can really help you move on and do better. Moving on to the second lesson, you have this amazing, well, maybe amazing is not the right word. It's a very truthful quote that I was grateful that you shared, that I'm going to have my ass handed to me at the same time that I'm seeing some pretty snazzy articles about me that make it seem like Hedley and Bennett is this problem-free land of milk and honey. I need to be okay with the sometimes gaping distance between those two realities. That's really tough. And I think that because of how positive and colorful you are, that might even be harder. How do you reconcile that?
I mean, oh, in so many ways, I have a coach, and I have a leadership coach for myself, for my leadership team. I have lots of candid conversations. We really, really, really try and get to the nitty gritty of like what caused things. And I don't like to shy away from, if something happened and I'm contributing to it, like why did that happen and how did I contribute? And there's like somewhere in the book where I talk about like, looking a problem in the white of the eye. Like you just kind of have to stare the problem in the face and own it, because only then can you move on from it, because you've really recognized what happened. And so I've done that enough times that I've become pretty comfortable with being uncomfortable, because I know that if I don't kind of lean into it, it might happen again. And guess what? Sometimes it does. And sometimes you make a mistake once and you're like, oh, I'm not going to do that again. And then you do it again. And then you have to look at in the white of the eye one more time and be like, why did you do it again? And it sucks. It sucks, because that's what the feeling of failure is. But I learned so much when I'm on the ground and when I'm like kind of being hockey stick to the face, because you actually are not just in this like glory moment of success and feeling like everything's perfect. You're feeling real feelings, which is something didn't work out and you were contributing to it. So what the hell are you going to do about it? And you can't just sit there on the floor and be a victim and feel sorry for yourself forever. You got to pick yourself back up and keep going. And what does that do? That builds motherfucking resilience and grit and stamina, which we all need and we all have. And when things are just perfect all the time, you're not building any of that. So when things go wrong, you feel like the world ended, when really the world didn't end, just something didn't go right.
It really does build resilience. And one of the insights that you had in the book that probably stayed with me the most for those tougher moments, but also just in the moments when it's just like moderately tough because you're trying to make something happen, is focus on what you have, not what you don't have. How do you use that mantra as a guiding principle in your life? Because I found myself repeating it to myself all the time after I read the book, and it helped me in big moments, but it also just helped me in everyday moments.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a good truth to have close to you, because when you start to feel a little sorry for yourself because you don't have certain tools or you don't have certain resources, it's just like, no, no, no. Come on. What do you have? And it makes you kind of be in the driver's seat versus in the passenger seat. And that's what I appreciate about it. It forces you into a place of, what am I going to do to change this situation versus what am I going to, versus like waiting for somebody to come and fix it for you. Right. And I like that because you have all kinds of things with you all the time. And it's, it might be your ability to connect with people. In my case, like I am really willing to just try stuff, and I don't always feel like I need to land the jump. And therefore I am more willing to take risks and do things like that. So whatever your gift is, just like lean into that. And that's the beauty of it. We all have a lot of things that are not materialistic, and we have to appreciate those and remind ourselves that we have them, and that if everything went away tomorrow, you still have yourself and arms and legs and eyeballs and nose and toes that will get you from here to there and will help you build something all over again.
That is such a beautiful sentiment to reflect on as we very sadly near the conclusion of our time together. I wish that I could keep you here all day. And I also wish that we were doing this at the treehouse and getting to be together in person. We'll have to do that together soon for sure. So I just want to end with one more question as we're now looking ahead. You really invited us into your world in the book right up till this very last year with the pandemic and the extraordinary work that your team did donating. I'm sure the number is over now, but I know it was 500,000 masks that you donated, right? It's probably more.
Yeah, it's like, honestly, we've kind of lost track of how many. It's been like hundreds of thousands, and we've made I think we're over 1 million masks now. So it's been a lot, and it was a wild journey. And I'm so freaking proud of our team for having, shown up for our community in that way. And we, even right now, we're trying to figure out like how can we get face masks to India to support them in all of the challenges that they're going through. And I think if you're just getting up every day to do business for the sake of doing business, it's harder than when you can find ways to drive purpose along with it. So if we can help people around us while we're growing our company too, like what a gift to be able to do both.
It's such a gift to be able to do both. And you are an incredible inspiration on that front always. I'd love to close with the dream that you have right now, Ellen, for the new chapter that you're in. What is the dream that is captivating you most that, as you beautifully share in the book, you might not have even vocalized yet because it's that big? Like, what's a big leap you're taking right now?
I think in so many ways, motherhood is a huge leap for me. I've been, kind of raising and growing this Hedley and Bennett baby child for close to 9 years now. And now I'm going to have my first child. And I also will continue to be part of Hedley and Bennett, of course, and just figuring out how to do both things and how to continue to let go of things at Hedley and Bennett so my team can grow and grow and grow. And when you're a business owner and you start as the one-man band and then you have a team, you have to let go a lot. So this is just like a series of events of me letting go of things so other people can take on things and do them even better than I have. And it never gets easier, but it's part of the path that I've been on. And I'm grateful to be experiencing it, even if it's hard sometimes, because as you know, I'm pro action. I like to do stuff. And so if I don't get to do more things, I'm like, wait, why not? So this journey will be motherhood, growing Hedley and Bennett, and continuing to let go of things that I used to do at Hedley and Bennett to let it grow even further, bigger than me.
Do you have a baby apron in development yet?
We don't, but my product development team has definitely been floating the idea many, many times. So you don't know. Stick around for November. Maybe there will be a baby apron in the mix.
Well, I think that is definitely needed. I am so grateful for you, Ellen, and for the time that we shared today. I think you have the most incredible spirit, and your honesty and positivity, I think, are so important for our world. So thank you for sharing that with us today. And for everyone tuning in, you are always hosting so many amazing events digital right now, but you also do things in person when the world is running normally. How can everyone stay up to date with you and tune into the awesome book tour that you've been on and all the videos that you're doing? Because you've got amazing interviews and cooking videos. It's a whole world over there.
It's a whole world. Definitely follow us on, you can follow me directly at Ellen Marie Bennett on Instagram, and Headley and Bennett on Instagram as well, and TikTok. We have a really fun TikTok full of awesome videos that teach you how to cook, and it's really cool. And then also, of course, go to our website, headleyandbennett.com, and that's HEDLEY and Bennett, and check out our aprons and all of our kitchen gear and all the crazy collabs we have coming up. We've got some pretty rad ones coming out towards the end of the year, so I'm excited for everyone to see. And to stay in tune with all of it, you can sign up for our newsletter on our website. So any of the above, any and all.
You are amazing. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. This was really, really fun.